this conversation always comes and goes, especially with the popularity of new modern martial arts and their growth and their expansion around the world. What do you say to people about their criticisms on the effectiveness of classical arts in a fight when clearly there are many examples online of practitioners with poor skills, crazy high ranks, outright ridiculous things performed in videos within the Bujinkan?
Well, they are not good. They sucks. When you look at their movement, they sucks. They are good only with their students, which are not students, they are slave. Slave. And unfortunately, here is also one of the bad aspects, negative aspect of the relationship that you have everywhere. It's when you stop practicing, you stop questioning the validity of the practice, the origin of the practice, why do I practice, what kind of effectiveness. When you stop to look around you, to look at the world, to look at the evolution of sports martial arts, and thinking because you stay on your dojo with your teacher who have a rank, and everything's going to work. And of course, the students say, oh, but I really attack him. You attack him with love. Last moment, you change the direction. So, it's not a surprise, it's logical. When you're not effective, where you don't have the skills, it is logical that when some people who do Muay Thai, MMA, boxing, wrestling, a good judo man, karate, whatever the style, Kyokushinkai, Gyojoryu, Uechi-ryu, it's normal you fail. And of course, they cannot answer to that because first, they doesn't respect the modern style. They doesn't study them. And sometimes there are former people who came from those modern style where they could not really shine in tournaments or anything, and they end up in the Bujinkan because of the ninja image, etc., etc. If there is one thing classical martial art should teach, it's to not mask, to not be blind, to stop dreaming. Don't get me wrong, I love ninja, I love movies, etc. But reality is reality. At least when you do sports martial art, there is randori, there is sparring. So if you brag too much, boom, on your face, and it's over. And if this doesn't exist in classical martial art, there is a reason, but it's not because it doesn't exist that you should not be very deeply aware of that and find a way, in the way you practice, through the way the things you learn, to make it happen. Because classical martial art is always about make it happen.
Well, that brings us into our next question, because a lot of people do talk about the value of randori, sparring, pressure testing out of this art or their martial art. Can you speak a little bit about the difference between, in our particular style, between what the written waza teach us in practice prior to the direct jisen applications that we must cultivate to become effective?
There is a process in everything, first of all right? Understand, for example, the kanji for randori, midare toru, that's the other way of reading it. If you translate literally, which sometimes is not good, in many cases not good because you lose the message behind the word. Ran, like the movies of Akira Kurosawa, ran, when you use the word ran in Japan, historically, means trouble. Trouble. So when you ran no toki ni, it means in a period of trouble. So it's not cool, it's not peace, it's trouble. And the other way of reading ran is midareru, means it's trouble, some things have been twisted, there is problem, you can see it's boiling. So a situation completely in ebullition. So most of the time, it deals with something very actual, difficult to control. Toru, tori, to grab, to hold, to seize. That's how you can translate. So if you said grab the trouble, seize the trouble, seize how? Grab how? Hold how? And the first time this word is used is in the densho of the school Kitoryu Jujutsu. So Ryuha, which have a strong background with the Yagyushin Kage-ryu. And the word have been used by Jigoro Kano many years after when he set up his judo. But the way he saw the randori was already changing, was a completely way of doing. It's like more aspiring things, but without striking. Actually, the meaning of randori is how can you handle the trouble? In other way, what are the tools, weapon, body skills, you're going to use in order to seize, hold, break, stop the trouble. So maybe someone who is violent, completely crazy, how are you going to knock him down? So that's the meaning of randori. Then, step by step, because of rules, because of education rules, you're going to put a shape, a context. You're going to put certain equipment, like in boxing, something like that, like in MMA, like in Muay Thai. You could see, for example, that there is some sport, they do fight, like a certain style, Ramwe, I think it's not Thailand, Laos, something like that. They have those kind of incredible box where they just have the band and they strike like crazy. Of course, they doesn't bite, but people are open and there is no protection. No protection, and this is just striking. Now imagine a boxer remove his gloves and the bandage. When you know that a professional boxer, his first tools are also very weak. Because of too many years of practice, the hands get weak. It's the same, the body get weak. So you're good in your prime when you're young, and when you're getting old, you cannot do the same way. But look, most of the coach, they doesn't really strike, or they do with the open hand. So the randori allow you to test, it's true. But you cannot test everything because of the rules of the education, especially when you want to sell this to a school. If you want to sell this to an education system, that it is good for educate, bring strength, moral value, etc., etc. We have gloves. On the street, there is no gloves. Actually, life doesn't take gloves on you. That's a very important thing. So when you practice with weapon, it's the same. You look at the kendo. Kendo, it's like boxing in a certain way. The highest champion of kendo, they are all in Japan. Folks. I'm talking in Japan. They are from police. And they practice between 2 to 3 hours kendo per day. They are so fast. When you look at the competition, the way they move the shinai, it's incredible. It's like someone who's doing a jab in a very fast figure. And if you practice kenjutsu, for example, for whatever do you, and you try to face them, because they move in a certain way, etc., it's a little bit complicated. So how can you make it happen? At the same time, you say, yeah, but I'm gonna injure him with a real bookend. Yeah, like you can show him that you can be close without hurting him and make him realize that what you do is dangerous. You know, whatever a boxer or someone who does MMA or Muay Thai, when they fail on something, they are not accustomed to, they are not used to. Something in the brain, and this is not only them, it's the same for classical martial art. When you fail on someone which is not the average, someone who moves differently, someone who is different and doesn't play by the same rule, he doesn't have the same book, actually I have no book, no rules. Here, as a human being, you think, oh, wait a minute. Let's become friends. Let me study what you do. What we do. But in classical martial art, we love to hide ourselves. We don't do the same. What we do is real. Yes, if it's real, you can even not face someone who have a little bit of more stamina, who work on different bases. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's really a shame. So, understand the historical context of the world and how they came, like the randori. Why they change. And for which purpose? Appreciate the reason, because there is good in randori, like it's good inspiring. This have helped a lot of people to grow, maybe sometimes to control their fear, their emotion, which is good. But there is a limit. Age is a limit. Stamina is a limit. You cannot do a sparring when you're 30, 40, 50 like you're 20. So there is things that needs to be considered. Doesn't mean that classical martial art is the best. Not at all. Not at all. You can choose what you want. You know, you dig your own grave alone. All right? And you decide the way you live. And what you let is your example. Whatever is wrong or good, it still teach. So very important to be aware of that in order to embrace it, learn from it, to become better and be more useful for the other. And that's one of the very important things. Whatever you're boxing, MMA, Muay Thai, classical martial arts, whatever the school, what is important is to not keep an attitude of I have the truth. What I'm doing, no, what you do is what you do, fine. Now can you go along with the other and how? That's the most interesting problem. Now we are looking separately. And classical martial art, even this is compartmentalized. And that's one of the bad points. You have to see what's bring the things together. Not separate the finger. Together they are strong. Alone. So that's, I think, a very important aspect to keep in mind.
That's fantastic.
I don't know if it's fantastic. It's fantastic if it works. It's fantastic if everyone around the table, whatever the style, the way you talk to them, the respect you give them, the love you give them,
Right.
they recognize what you do as a sportsman and think this is something else.
Well, and that's another question that's been put on the table here, especially with the modern outlook on classical Bujutsu. Is a martial art effective if it doesn't compete in the MMA or the UFC or these things? You know, some of these people that train in these styles, in whether they're very good in them or not, tend to look at the classical styles through their lenses and may not understand the value of classical training. And what would you say to that?
Well, first of all, to study a little bit more. They didn't meet everyone. They didn't fail on everyone. There is a lot of people who are really good out there that doesn't do MMA, that doesn't do Muay Thai, sometimes even people who do no martial art, and they are more effective than people who practice sports martial art because they have no, let's say, no standard of striking. They are not limited. So this is one thing they should practice and study a little bit more and not looking just by the lens and filter and open themselves a little bit more because there is a lot of things to learn from classical martial art for a sports point of view, like there is a lot of things to learn from sports in a classical martial art point of view. The advancement of the science, whatever it is in physical therapy or the way of using the body, biomechanic and how the muscle works. All those kind of things. And of course, things that deals with the behavior comportamental studies that you have already in classical martial art because it's made for kill. And it's not because you belong from a Ryuha, which was famous in the 14th century for that master, that automatically today you're good. Sometimes you suck more, even more. And actually it's even a blaspheme or completely disrespect the memories of the history of those masters and the life they put, the sacrifice, the tears, and in order that one day we can practice on a Sunday, on a Saturday, in a cool way. In sports, when you are in sports, of course, there is this aspect of sparring. And if you look very well, a lot of things are based on the physical conditioning. So you're going to spend a lot of time on physical conditioning, technique a little bit, and a lot of sparring. And which is very interesting is that the wound happen in the sparring. So you have to wonder why. Then of course there is the parameter of weight. Everyone needs to be more or less the same weight. What's going to change on the same weight if you're taller or not, bigger or not, faster or not, stronger or not, etc., etc. I think both can help and support each other. That's how I feel myself. I like sports. I like boxing very much. I like everything that deals with kick. I was a big fan of Bruce Lee. And then, of course, all the Chinese comedy with Jackie Chan, etc., the way they kick, it's incredible. And they are kicking incredible. Of course, kicking in the front of a camera, kicking in a bag, it's not like kicking in the head or kicking on someone's body. It's very different. And also the psychological shock that happened at that moment. So there is a lot of parameter that needs to be practiced. Now, people who think like this, here again. Did you meet everyone, or you did just tap on the YouTube, watch, I don't know, Mac Dojo or Bullshit Do, and that's it. Because even those people who does this, I understand, this is nice, to say, oh, look at there, or you have fake teacher, fake art. True, it's good. And making business on that, it's a little bit easy too. Point the bad point, showing that there is something fake. It's good. Now is what you're going to do from that. At the same time, why don't you see the other? And sometimes you might see on a master which is strange. What you look, you don't understand. Go meet with him. Go directly meet with him and try. Now if he said no, why no? Explain. Ask yourself. Ask him. And listen the reason he give you. If he asks, okay, do it with my student, but the student cannot do on you. If he's a good master, he should be able to do it to you. If he's a true master, he should be able to apply, sit, listen what you have to say, and do it. Now you have to take care of the manner you ask. If you arrive like a cowboy and you want to try, well, if I was him, I attack you before the question get out. It is really important to know how you approach people. You want to tell that someone is not good? Fine, up to you. It tells a lot about your intention too. Go to meet those people, try a class with them on the side, call them, I would like to see if your art is effective. Okay, come, welcome. And if he said, no, we are not about that, well, do you want directly to say the guy is not good? Well, maybe. Give it some time. I think we should check everyone, every style. Every sportsman, they have something good to learn, to use in order to add to our own value, if value we have, another value. So it's always an added value. It's always a plus. And in the case of classical martial art, you have this aspect of ryu, which means nagare. For every ryu means nagare. Translate by the flow, all right? Means also the continuation. It can be like a flow of thought, a flow of many things. By the way, also, when you go to Japan, or the Japanese, toilet, when you want to press the things, you know how it's called? It's called nagashi. So it means also get away. So look at that. You can have the most beautiful thing like the worst. This aspect of Ryu means to be with your time also. To live with the time you are, the period you are. Be aware of the other style, the technical advancement, sports advancement, muscle advancement, how, why, and try to nourish yourself the same way master and disciple of the past did in their time. Because if you want to live like a samurai, not using any smartphone in the middle of your mountain, it's going to be really hard if you get knocked down on the street.
So it's fair to say when looking at any martial art, any style, any methodology, it's not necessarily fair to judge by one practitioner, by one person. There's good and bad. They train in everything.
Yes.
So in a sense, the art is transmitted through humans.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot exist without humans.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be, there's fault and there's good.
Of course.
In everything. So always, obviously, recognize when something is not right, but always try to search out the best in that, because they must coexist with each other.
Yes. Look, there is good in everything. All right. Now, after you have to understand the context, the historical context of all those art, the reason why they have been created and how. Then, not forget the way they evaluated. Now, if you want to say there is no this, ninja didn't exist, or it doesn't work, or the Spartian was that, etc., it's very important to be cautious, really, and to measure, to temper the word and your judgment. Especially in classical martial arts, especially because there is life who will call you back and will show you, and I hope not in the hard way, that you're wrong. So it is important also to not make our experience the experience of everyone. Everyone go through different filter, prism, and met people, for example.
Even within the art itself?
Of course, the art itself, if you close someone in a box and it doesn't get strong and rich from the outside, he dead, he become atrophied. That's why things about the kata, for example, needs to be thinked, needs to be understood through maybe the education, pedagogia, or health. And if where they match, where they doesn't, where they separate, then you might have some teacher who are a little bit more into the combat, into the competition. You're going to have some more who are more in the self-defense because maybe they were not good in competition and maybe they have some physical problem that doesn't allow them, for example, to do the split, to do many things. Everyone, like always, is going to find what he wants, what he looks for in the art he have. The problem is to not close the door. Not close the door and to be careful about the mixture. Too much mixture brings you to the toilet. So it's the same for knowledge and everything. There is things you can add together and become more beautiful.
Well, it's like you mentioned before, when you start from the position of viewing the differences, you've already limited yourself.
Of course.
Instead of seeing
What
unifies
unifies
all
of
the
course,
arts
of
together,
course,
what
of
we
course,
share.
of course. If you study someone just to fight him, well, you lose many things. When you study someone, maybe at the beginning for fighting, but step by step you study him and you see that, hey, you have great things, you start to learn respect. Most of the time, the greatest respect comes from the best enemy. Because they teach you. Huh? And you were talking about pressure. We need to work under pressure. Pressure is a privilege in classical martial art. Pressure is a privilege in life. Yeah, oh, you're going to say, oh no, I want to be in comfortable. Martial art, classical martial art are born in uncomfort zone. They are born for trouble time, randori. They are born for facing what is difficult, the twist and turn of life, and everything difficult. For that, you prepare yourself. And maybe it won't work, maybe you will fail, but you will keep on doing and fail forward each time. So it's not about comfortable. The problem is, with the peacetime and the many things that happen, it becomes comfortable. You practice with people who attack the way you want. And then, when you get on something not much sophisticated, with some rules where there is sparring, where you need to move, oh, you're out of your zone of control, it doesn't attack the way you want. You can see this just in boxing. If your right hand, okay, you practice the left because it's logical, and suddenly you fell on someone with a perfect southpaw. It always creates a problem. And this is just about the right and the left. All people in classical martial arts practice only from the right side and not from the left side, like in Art of Sword. It's like saying that people who were on the battlefield in the 14th, 15th century never practiced from both sides? Come on. That's why just looking at judo, karate, or boxing, you need to practice both sides. There is a competition, of course, there is one side maybe stronger than the other. Maybe your best technique will come from the right side. Most of the time you are saved by the left side, by the one you don't expect. And it's always like this. Expect the unexpected. Classical martial art is about that.
Even in baseball, pitchers
Same.
have a hard time pitching to a left-handed swimmer.
Yes, and suddenly how many great coach in sports help a great player to find a new perspective just by making him changing a side, moving here. How? Because we need the opposition. Actually, we are, as a human being, the complete reflection of the contradiction, when they we like, when they we hate, we difficultly constant, the discipline we don't like, and we need to accept that instead of putting ourselves like the people who have the truth, or my heart is the more effective, I strike faster than everyone, and vive Cobra Kai. I love, by the way.
That's great.